Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there is Michelle Chalfant. How are you doing today, Michelle?
Right across the room.
Right across the room. It's a flat world after all.
Just a few thousand miles away.
I love Tennessee.
Hey, you never told me what happened with the bombing in Portland.
Oh, yeah, you heard about that.
Yeah, it's all over the news.
You know,
I emailed you and you never got back to me, and I wondered if
really?
you were okay.
Oh no, that's horrible of me to do that. I'm sorry I did not get back to you. Yes, we had it was a construction contractor had hit a gas line, and it was a horrible thing. It was a horrible experience, not just because of the experience of the explosion, but the fact is it happened at Northwest 23rd and Gleason, and Northwest 23rd Street. If you've ever been to Portland, like 23rd, you head down to 23rd. It's like a major sort of touristy place. All the fine shops are there, great restaurants, a little independent Portland. It's a great sort of, it is what Portland is when you watch Portlandia. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of right in that area. It's become the stereotype of our city. And so all the tourists go there. It is a miracle that, a lot of people weren't severely injured or killed. There's a hospital very close to that. Like it's a miracle that things weren't much worse. So, we definitely really, I think, owe a lot to the rescue folks who were out there doing good work, and our thoughts certainly for, or we're with the people who were injured, the fire rescue folks who were injured in the process. It was a really scary thing. But ultimately, the city is okay. It was an accident. It wasn't. There are so many issues of fear around terror in our country right now that I think this was an accident in a gas explosion, and so I think there was a huge sigh of relief that we weren't victim to something worse, and so. We were very lucky.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're okay.
Yeah, and I am not terrible. I mean, I'm like 15 minutes. 15 minutes by car. So I'm. Okay. It's not terribly close to us. Anyhow.
Okay.
Okay. So our topic of the day, Michelle, we're talking about depression, and you have titled this "Walking Out of Depression." Can you kick us off with just talking about what does it feel like? What is the experience that we're talking about when we're talking about depression here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So depression feels like it could be a few different things, like sadness or apathy, where you just feel flat, helpless, hopeless, unworthy. Those are the emotions typically that are tied to depression. And in my opinion, I really feel like, just in all the years of experience of working with all these clients and other people, that we've got depression, and it can come from our emotional body, or it can come from a physical body. There are a couple of different ideas that I have on depression, and I'm much more, I just want to say this, of a natural approach, or I want to try that first. For my life, and a lot of people that come to see me, they don't want to do the meds. They want to try something natural or holistic. So I think for people that are interested in doing that, this podcast will resonate, because this is where I start. And I never would say to anybody, don't go to your doctor, because I think that that's very important as well. But there are some things to try prior to that. And there are some understandings to have about what depression even is. So one thing that I've said many times, you've heard me talk about this on the show, is that depression is when we take our emotions and we just shove them down over and over and over. We don't want to feel anything on what I would call the negative end of that, of our emotional perspective or scale. So humans tend to want to be happy, joyful, peaceful, in bliss. But on the other end of the yardstick, we have anger, frustration, sadness, grief, I don't matter, I'm not worthy, and we don't want to do those. We don't know how to feel those. In fact, our ego will say, if you feel those, you may die, so don't do that. So let me come up with advice so you don't have to feel those. So let's numb them out with a glass of wine, or let's do some drugs, let's go shopping, let's create drama to avoid. Let me become a victim.
Right, because if I don't feel those emotions, they must not exist.
Right. And then we're all better.
Yeah.
Which is not true because if we remember, we have a human energy field. So it's like we take these emotions and we're putting them somewhere in us. Even though we don't feel them at the moment, they're still part of who we are. So it's kind of like walking around with an empty backpack on, and every time you feel a negative emotion, instead of feeling it, you take a rock and you put it in that backpack. So what happens after, a year of putting a rock every time you have a negative emotion, putting in that backpack?
Yeah, it just gets heavier and heavier and starts to drag you down.
And it's kind of tiring. You might want to take a nap and, I'm in pain. I'm physical pain.
It's much easier to sit still rather than move. It's much easier to find an excuse to sit and ruminate on all the rocks. It's
the same thing with depression. So when I have a client that comes in and says, I think I'm depressed, I don't know what to do. And the first thing I say to them is, let's start out with breathing. Because when we have or we're stuck in these negative emotions, we don't breathe very well. And we do the shallow breathing from the high chest area, or we don't breathe, we hold our breath. It's not healthy from a physical perspective either. So we breathe and we start breathing, and then I ask them to tune in their body. Sometimes we can't name an emotion, but we are able to identify where we feel maybe some constriction in the physical body. And I always say it's chin down. It's not in the head. Some will say, well, the back of my head feels tense, which it could be, but typically it's below the chin. So you might feel tension in the shoulders or the heart, or the stomach gets knotted up.
Oh, solar plexus for me.
Yes,
man, right behind my chest. Yeah.
Yes. So we say, great. Well, let's just get curious about that and let's just observe it. And I sit with them and we just allow it to then move through. And then after 5 minutes or so, it depends on the person, but what do you know? It's gone in 5 minutes or a few minutes or maybe 30 minutes. And then another one will pop up. Okay. So sometimes it's not about naming the emotion. It's about noticing the physical sensation in the body and just becoming aware of it, watching it and allowing it to move through. When I tell you, people leave and they go, oh my God, I feel so much lighter. I'm like, you just felt some emotions. Again, we don't even have to name them, but you allowed the energy to move through you and you've been carrying it in this backpack for God knows how long. That's part one. It can certainly be just that I don't know how to feel my emotions and I'm shoving them down. So this is, I think, for people that might come in, again, maybe a week ago they were fine and then today they're coming in and they feel really sad. This even works for people with light depression that are just not manically depressed people. But even if you are, I would still say to try this because I really, really, really feel like when we are able to start feeling what's down there, it starts to move things inside of us. It moves our energy. It moves things. So then when it comes up, we feel it and then we move on. A lot of us are sitting with old trauma or PTSD from childhood, and we just never knew what to do with it. So we shove it in, we shove it down. And what do you know? 20, 30 years later, we're sitting around with depression and we don't even know where it came from. And it could be from way back then. So we want to just start to allow the energy to move through, start feeling these emotions slowly. And I also will say this, the emotions don't have to flood us. And if they do, we can stand up and walk away. When I'm with a client, I'll say, hey, allow yourself to feel this right now. And I want your brain to hear me say, it doesn't mean you have to feel every single one you ever felt, but let's pick one. So if you're by yourself, you can just say, I just want to feel one. And if you start feeling more than one or it gets too intense, so you stand up and you walk away and you start doing something else. So we do have control over it. Number two, one thing that I have found that comes up time and time again is that oftentimes depression is the result of something else. I have many people that have come in with adrenal fatigue, and adrenal fatigue feels an awful lot like depression. Low energy, want to sleep all the time, don't feel like doing anything, food cravings, low mood, all of that. And when they get their adrenals in order, guess what happens? This quote unquote depression begins to lift.
So now we're talking about a sort of chemical, physiological symptom that can look like depression, but if you don't get your head wrapped around the emotional part of it, you may treat it the wrong way.
Right.
I mean, I guess I'm saying you don't want to treat that as depression.
Exactly.
You want to treat it as a hormonal chemical issue.
Exactly.
And you can fix that.
And many people will go to the doctor and their doctor will say, oh yes, here's some Prozac. And then they're on an antidepressant, but they actually have adrenal fatigue.
Well, this is like thyroid too. I mean, thyroid and even Hashimoto's. Yes. I mean, you get to the point where you're really suffering with what absolutely looks and manifests like depression. And with just a microscopic dose of thyroid, suddenly your entire life is new.
Exactly.
And that's all it took. It wasn't depression, it was thyroid.
Thyroid is another one. Candida.
Oh, sugar, right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So many of us are walking around with candida and we have no idea.
It's the worst. It's like the zombie plague,
It
candida.
is.
Oh, it's like an alien living inside you. Makes you make terrible decisions.
It does.
Yeah.
It messes with our brain. It gives us brain fog. We're tired. We have food cravings. We can have low mood. I mean, it looks like depression.
Yeah.
Here's the problem, though. If you have thyroid, adrenal fatigue, or candida, and you go to your primary care doc, there's a really high chance they will not find it. So, in my opinion, a functional medicine doctor can find that stuff. And primary care docs sometimes, I mean, I've just seen it so much, Pete, where they don't know to even look for that. And the blood work may come up with like low vitamin B or low this vitamin. So they'll put them on vitamins or they'll put them again on an antidepressant. The thyroid testing that a primary care doc will do, it doesn't include all of the markers that you need in order to really test for, like you said, Hashimoto's, and they miss it all the time.
And the problem with that is not doing that test first is a real challenge. I mean, it's not, I love my primary care physician. I really do. He's awesome. But I also know that he is operating from a prescribed set of obligations to the facility that don't always meet my obligations. And, I don't have what I want. And what I aspire to is to have my own doctor house, right? I want somebody who every time I go in with a problem is going to get to the bottom of it because he's Sherlock Holmes in a lab coat. And that's not always what we get. And so it's not a bad thing. Yeah, they're doing their best.
But they're doing what they're trained to do.
Yes.
And they're not trained to look for this. And they're not trained, by the way, I mean, my brother-in-law is a doctor and he has, I don't remember don't quote me, please, but like one class on diet nutrition or something.
Oh, yeah.
In all the years of medical school. So they can they have to learn so much. So there's certainly a place for them. I'm not saying that we should get rid of all of our primary care docs. That's not what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is if you have these types of things, you might want to find someone that's more of a complementary medicine approach because they know to look for those things versus your primary care doc. They just don't. And they can't. They're looking for other things, and that's okay.
Well, and what I love thinking about this, and we're in an era where we can afford to talk like this, right? And I just mean we have resources out there to be able to talk like this. Everybody needs a team. Everybody needs a team of people to help you, and that's okay. We weren't all born with an instruction book.
No, if my son has strep throat, I'm taking him into the doctor. I need to get him tested, and then boom, we'll get the medication and we're out.
They're gonna fix it,
right? But if my son has, like he had Osgood Slaughter on it with his knees, I am treating him with acupuncture and I'm using oils for inflammation. And the doctor wanted him to go maybe have surgery and all this other. I'm like, no. And guess what? He's fine. And I did acupuncture. We need a team. I agree with you. I mean, I agree. But I just want to raise awareness to these types of things. So when people are walking around with depression, it might not be that. It could be something else. Like, again, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. What the heck is that? I wonder what has gone on in their earlier childhood or what trauma is in their past. Because I find that there's trauma that is unhealed, that is freezing up their whole body. That is what I have found. So once we can start, again, working with those emotions that they've now locked into their whole body, guess what? It frees up the emotions. I teach them how to feel their emotions. And then guess what? The symptoms become less and less and less.
If you're listening to this and you feel like you may be suffering from this sort of an emotional experience, what do you advise folks to do? How do you advise them to start getting a handle on where they are?
They need to breathe.
Start with breathing. Again,
so many of us hold our breath. We don't want to feel emotions. We live from the high chest. We're living from this. And I would ask everybody right now, if you're sitting down or standing, it doesn't matter. Take a nice deep breath right now. Go ahead, Pete, do it.
I'm doing it.
What happened to your shoulders when you took that deep breath? In your chest.
So 3 things happened. My chest, my chest. But see, I'm a little bit of a ahead of the rest of the class because you've already done this experiment on me. It's like a year and a half
it doesn't
ago.
matter that we've talked about it. What happened just right now? Because that will tell me if you've been practicing breathing the right way.
Well, I tend to breathe now when I'm breathing intentionally, and maybe that's my problem. When I'm breathing intentionally, I breathe from down deep, from my diaphragm down low, and I'm breathing out. But at the same time, I notice that as my belly expands, my posture improves, and my shoulders naturally go back, and I'm standing about an inch and a half taller.
Great. So
that's
yes,
good.
that's very good. But what I would love to hear you say is, yes, I've reprogrammed my mind, so now I'm breathing like that most of the time.
I'm not there yet.
So,
I'm not there yet.
So what we want to do when we breathe from that high chest area, and we, our shoulders come up when we take a breath, we're living in the sympathetic nervous system, which means, again, we're living in fight or flight. The cortisol is releasing like the lion is chasing me. We want to learn how to breathe from the belly and slow our breath way down. And I've got that belly breath on my website, and I think it's on the YouTube channel, right? Just go find out how to do this belly breath, which means on the inhale, your belly expands, and on the exhale, your belly comes back in. And again, for me, in about 2 weeks of just practicing off and on, like driving the car or just for seconds every day, throughout the day, my brain, and I check myself all the time. I'm like, how am I breathing? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm breathing from my belly. Perfect. So breathing correctly helps us physiologically, physically, emotionally, mentally, all of it. That starts changing things on the inside. So learn how to breathe. Make sure you are breathing, okay? Secondly, meditate.
Full stop. Meditate.
Because we need to slow down. We are on this, oh my God, I got to get this done, that done, this done, that done. I got to keep going. We are living in this stressed out body all the time. We don't ever slow down. The brain needs to slow down to recalibrate, to balance itself. There are so many studies on why meditation is fantastic for you. I mean, as you know, they're all over the place. So Google that if you would like more information on it. And then people say, well, I don't have time. So I have created a 1-minute meditation. It's a guided meditation, and a 5-minute and a 10-minute. Just if you don't like mine, find someone's. Go do meditation. If you can do it every single day, it's a great way to start your day. You can do it throughout the day. If you can't do it throughout the day, then just do some intentional breathing. This helps with depression, I promise. It helps to bring you back into mindfulness. It helps you bring everything back into the moment. It slows everything down. This is what the brain needs. This is what we need.
I'm going to add something because I started doing something, started really forcing myself to do this, and it is amazing, is to set an alarm on my watch that says every 3 hours, go close your eyes in a corner and do some deep breathing for 1 minute.
Yes.
Like set a timer and just do it for 1 minute. And it is really disarmingly effective. Like until you start doing it and get really practiced at it, you think it won't work, and you'll say, I don't have time to do that stuff. But in fact, you do, and it's okay, and you'll get good at it, and it's incredibly powerful.
You brought up a memory for me. A client told me, a few clients have actually said this. This is another one I didn't even have on my list, is working with that inner child and setting a timer and hugging. She used to hug her inner child, and she would just imagine herself as like a 3-year-old standing in front of her, and she worked all day. And she said, I would just imagine myself checking in and hugging my inner child every hour.
Yeah.
And she came in after a few weeks and said, this is changing me. And all I'm doing is just hugging this inner part of me. Because remember, the child is where all of our true feelings and needs are stored inside of us. So when we can access that inner child part and really connect to him or her, it's again, bringing these emotions through. It's another way to do it. Another important thing is that we learn how to surrender and let go. We're really not good at this, where most of us are very controlling in one way or another. And this also can lead to depression, because this ego of ours has an idea of what our life should look like. It should look like this. My kids should act like this. I should look like this. My partner should look like this. My house should look like, we get married to what our life should look like. And when it doesn't look like that, we start feeling sad. And the longer it doesn't look like we think it should look, we get sadder. And then we start making up stories about it, like, oh, I'll never have this. I'll never have the money. I'll never have my partner. I'll never have blah, 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 fill in the blank. And it leads, so our thoughts can also lead us into this negative, more depressed state. So when we learn how to let go and surrender, which is what I was talking about and feeling so sad about living here, it's like I just let it all go. And it was like this giant blanket lifted off of me that I've been carrying around for many years of living here. So when we can surrender to, this is just my experience and I have no control over it.
Yeah.
I really don't. The only thing I have control over is, am I surrendering or not? Really, surrendering and letting go. It doesn't mean laying down on your path and doing nothing. It means I'm going to surrender to things I'm unable to change. EFT is so great, emotional freedom technique. I think that is a great way to help people to release these stuck emotions that we are afraid to feel. And it's so easy to do, and it works beautifully. Of course, there's always light therapy and things like that, but also just find someone to talk to. Just having an unbiased person to even sit and listen to us is very, 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 very helpful for us in shifting our emotional state.
This is fantastic stuff. And I feel like this addresses and it really at least gives you a starting point. If you're feeling this sort of emotional space, there are some great resources and some great links that we'll put in the show notes here to give you at least a sense of a starting point for how to approach your own emotional well-being before you surrender yourself to a process that may be uncomfortable and may not be uncovering the right stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, these are just some pointers. And here's another important thing. Google, what does low dopamine look like? What does low serotonin look like? What are those symptoms? What does that look like in life? And figure out what you're low in, and then go and find things that can help to boost those. So there's so many natural ideas out there again.
Thank you so much, Michelle Chalfant, for your time and experience. And I hope that this helps to address some of the concerns of those who have been asking the question, experiencing these things, these experiences. You have a starting place. So take it. Own it. It's all yours. Thank you, Michelle Chalfant. I'm Pete Wright. And on behalf of both of us, we really look forward to catching you right here next time in The Adult Chair.